Uh, Hi, I have Dr. Brook here from the Ayn Rand Institute. He's the president, and we're going to be discussing the free market revolution. Dr. Brook, in regards to how Ayn Rand, she spoke about ending big government, you explain it clearly in your book. Can you give us an idea, a little bit clearer about what you're referring to?
So I think what's important here is to understand that Ayn Rand brings a different perspective to why government has grown, and as a consequence is how we need to shrink it. And her view is that government has grown not because of any economic argument, but primarily because of certain philosophical arguments about morality, primarily about moral responsibility and moral duty, and that the conventional morality which we live in supports a big role for government. And the title of the book is a little misleading because it's not big or small that I'm concerned about. It's unlimited versus limited. Government today has grown unlimited. It can do anything. It can do anything to anyone, all in the name of helping, all in the name of making us good people, all in the name of morality. And therefore, what we argue, what Ayn Rand argued, is if you're going to challenge this unlimited government, what you really need to challenge is the morality, is the moral code that allowed it to grow and allows it to continue to grow and expand its influence.
In page 46 of your book, you mentioned we need to defend the pursuit of more. Why is capitalism moral despite seeking selfish interests, and why would selfishness be moral?
See, capitalism is moral because it promotes people's self-interest. It promotes their selfishness. So Ayn Rand believed that morality should be about the pursuit of one's own self-interest. That morality is a code of values that helps guide you towards your own happiness, towards your own success, towards your own flourishing. So she's very much in the Aristotle tradition. Aristotle believed that the purpose of morality is to define the virtues and values that lead to eudaimonia, happiness, flourishing, success as a human being. So Rand would flip the question and she would say, why should I live for other people? Why is other people's lives more important than mine? If I have one shot at this life, shouldn't the purpose of my life be my life? Shouldn't the purpose of my life be to make the most of my life, to live the best life that I can? And isn't that what selfish means? Selfish means, if you look at just a dictionary definition, not a modern dictionary, but an old dictionary of what selfish means, it means taking care of self. Well, shouldn't we take care of self? Shouldn't we make the most of our lives? So for Rand, morality is about being selfish. She actually calls her morality rational selfishness. It's the pursuit of your own self-interest. And what is the means by which you pursue your self-interest? Well, she says there's only one means, and that is through reason, through thought, through exercising our rational faculty.
Dr. Brook, you mentioned happiness. What are the principles of happiness?
Well, I believe that happiness requires the pursuit of certain virtues, the seeking of certain values. Happiness is a consequence of having self-esteem. That sense that you are fit for this world, that you are competent, that you can be successful in the world as it is. That's what self-esteem is. How do you attain self-esteem? You attain self-esteem by achievement, by succeeding, by, for example, being productive and producing the goods that you consume, producing the goods that feed your family and the people that you love. That comes from work, that comes from having a career, that comes from being productive. And at the root of being productive is, what does it mean for a human being to be productive? It means to reshape our environment to fit our needs. It's restructure our environment in order to make it possible for us to survive. That requires the application of reason. Reason is man's basic means of survival. It's the way in which we adapt reality to fit us. Every other animal, every other species out there either adapts to its environment or dies. We don't wait to adapt to our environment. We adapt the environment to us. And we do that by the application of our reason to the problem of survival. So we need to build a home. We don't wait to find a better cave. We chop down trees and we figure out how to build a house, right? Or we pour concrete. And so that is what makes us as human beings unique. So for her to be happy means to have self-esteem. To have self-esteem, you have to be productive. And to be productive, you have to apply your mind. You have to apply reason to the problem of your survival, of your success. So to be happy, you ultimately have to be rationally self-interested.
And therefore, business itself, which is seeking profit, like you said in page 48 in the Unlearned Lessons chapter, you mentioned that like the financial crisis of 2008, that conventional view was that the free market had failed, when in fact it was the unfree market that failed.
It's kind of funny, if you had a sense of humor about these things, to blame free markets for the 2008 financial crisis. Because there were no free markets in 2007. Because when we say free market, what do we mean? We mean free of coercion, free of government intervention, free of government control, free of government regulation. And yet in 2007, the banking industry was the most regulated, controlled industry in the United States. The housing industry, the mortgage industry, heavily regulated and controlled. Every aspect of the financial crisis happened in an area that was heavily regulated and controlled. Every bank in the United States in 2007 was regulated by 5 different regulatory agencies. Where's the free market that failed? So we had a heavily controlled and regulated market that failed. So we could argue which controls and which regulations caused the financial crisis. But you can't argue that a free market caused the financial crisis, because there was none. It's a fallacy to attribute to the markets in 2007 freedom when they were so heavily regulated and controlled. So what we have in the United States is a mixed economy. A lot of statism and some capitalism. Capitalism in the sense of private property. In the financial industry, it's overwhelmingly government and a little bit of freedom. That's what failed. So I would say, without studying it even, I would look at the government part of it, right? Once you study it, you realize that the financial crisis was caused from the beginning to end in every part of it by some form of government control. Every time you peel the onion, another layer, you discover government control, a government regulation, a government incentive, a government program that shifted the incentives, that shifted the structure of the financial institutions, that shifted the way money circulated. A lot of it has to do with the Federal Reserve to create this crisis. This is a government-caused crisis from beginning to end.
Well, in our neck of the woods, like we're in Ecuador here, and in nations like Venezuela and other Latin American countries, the state promotes collectivism. And you mentioned in page 185 of the immoral entitlement state that the entitlement state is fueled by altruism, like a pseudo self-interest correct. You are buying security, but in reality, you buy insecurity. How's that? Can you elaborate?
Well, think about what it is that a welfare recipient is getting, right? He's getting a check. And, some people say, well, that's good because you can buy groceries. But life is not about groceries. Life is about living. It's about human flourishing. It's about making the most of your own life. It's about happiness. We talked about happiness. How can a welfare recipient ever be happy? If a precondition of happiness is knowing that you can take care of yourself, that you can feed your family, that you can change your environment to fit, that you are suitable for this life. What you do when you hand a welfare recipient a check is you tell him, you're a loser. You can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of your family. You're dependent on me, right? What you're basically doing is institutionalizing not just into poverty, but into a mental condition that says they are worthless. They will never have self-esteem. They'll never be proud of themselves. They'll be miserable their whole lives. And that's why you see drug rates high among people who receive welfare. You see poverty obviously high among those who receive poverty. They never break out. It's very hard to break out of the entitlement. So it destroys not just the adults, it destroys the children. and they buy into this mentality, and they'll never be happy. And life's about happiness. So you're taking from them much more than you're giving them. And they are the victims. They are victims of the welfare state. The people who receive the check are the victims of the welfare state. And it's a horrible, horrible condition under which to live as a human being, being dependent on the state or being dependent on the charity of other people. It used to be a long time ago, right, in the 19th century, that people got into trouble. You know, something bad happened to them, and they couldn't pay the bills, and they would go and they would seek charity, but it was short term, and they knew, and they were ashamed, and they were embarrassed, and they would take the charity, and they would try to quickly get a job and get back on their feet and strive and be successful again. But now, it's institutionalized. They're going to be in this condition forever. So that's what we mean by the harmful effects of this condition, this destruction of self-esteem. So if you're poor, but you work hard, and you make a living, and you feed yourself, and again, you take care of your kids, and maybe you send your kids to school, and you pay for their education, at the end of the day, you have a sense of pride. I did it. I'm responsible for the success of my family, of myself. I'm living, right? When you start giving them a check, you destroy that pride. And there's nothing more horrific than that.
So you actually get the fruit of your labor. That's what's missing here in the welfare state. So like in page 123, Selfishness Unleashed, in the 1800s, to be an American, going back to America, was to be an entrepreneur in the deepest sense. Can America ever find a path back to free capitalism, do you believe?
I hope so. It's difficult, because once you get into this mentality of entitlement, then it's very hard to break out of it. And the problem is, the historical problem is that America was founded as a free country with a great political philosophy. You know, the founding fathers of America were geniuses who were great political theorists, and they established a country as good as any country in the history of mankind. And it was founded on a moral principle, on the principle of individual rights. You have a right to live your life as you see fit, free of coercion. That's what individual rights mean. It means freedom to act, free of people forcing you to act differently. But it was founded on quicksand. It was founded on a moral foundation of altruism, on a moral foundation that says, yes, you can act, but your moral duty is to help everybody else in need and not to pursue your own self-interest. And that was the conflict from the beginning. And then as more Europeans came to America, they brought the European philosophy and the European altruism to America, and slowly that was eroded. And it took 100 years, I'd say from about 1880, 1890 until today, 140 years. And that American spirit of the founding has almost disappeared. How do you resurrect that? And this time, build the right foundation. But building that right foundation means challenging conventional morality. It means challenging the philosophers, the preachers, our mothers, everybody who teaches morality out there. We need a challenge. Very hard and a very long-term project.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Brooks. It's been great having you here, and this is just very insightful and so much to think about. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.